So the question that we have is, we are not required to plot the graphs for all the variables in our data set. Add an additional argument to the function in 2 named var. This will take a list containing the variable index and return the graphs for only those variables. By default, if the list of variables is not provided, we must return the required graph for all the variables. So let's start. So I have function called graph3. It takes parameter as df and var. So var is where you pass your columns. So the columns that you want. Df is where you pass the data frame. So what this function does is it creates a new data frame with required columns. So if nothing is passed, it will take all the columns. If something is passed, right, it will take only those columns and create a new data frame with those columns. And then I have a list called numerics, in which I have passed all types of numerical variable that might come. For example, in some data frames, you might have float 64 as numerical variable. In some, you might have int32 as a numeric variable. And then I have another data frame. So here, what I'm doing is I'm taking the data frame with required columns, what the user has passed. If the user has passed required column as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I'm taking that, and I'm taking only the numerical variable from that data frame, and I'm passing it in a new data frame called numeric variables. And then I have another one called categorical variable. This also is the same, but instead of numeric, it takes object data type. It takes the required columns, and it takes only the categorical variable from required columns and saves it in categorical variable data frame. And once I have separate data frames for numeric variable and categorical variable, I am calling histogram and box plot with numeric variable and bar plot with categorical variable. So first, histogram with numeric variable will be called. This data frame, again, what it will have is, it will have only those columns which is passed by the user, and if it is numeric variable, it will enter into this function. In this function, for each index and variable, so this idx is index, this variable is a column name. For each index and column name, it will give, it will plot histogram for each column, and it will give X label, Y label, title, and everything, right? Yeah, so that's about histogram. And once histogram is plotted for numeric variable, it will box plot will be plotted for the same numeric variable, right? For each column, box plot will be plotted, and then it will check if the columns that was passed in var, if it has any categorical variable, it will enter bar plot 3 function, and for each column, it will create a bar plot. So let's try it with one data set. Okay, so I have attrition.csv data set. Let's just see what is there in this data set. Yeah, so these are the columns in this data set. This is basically a company's employee related data set, which has employee's age, whether employee has left or not, business travel, if he travels frequently or not, and his department, his education field, and things like that. Here we can see that age and attrition are integer, and business travel and department and education field are categorical. So let's consider that data set. There is question number 3. Yep, this one. So here I'm doing this just to see what is the index of each column, because we'll be passing the index of the column, right? So that's why. So let's just take columns needed as 0, 1, 4, 5. Okay. Run. So we can see that for each column name, what is the index? For age, it is 0. For attrition, it is 1. For business travel, it's 3. So the columns that we selected where 0, 1, 4, 5. So that's age, attrition, education field, and environment satisfaction. We can see that age and attrition and environment satisfaction were numeric variables. Education field was categorical variable, right? So these were the columns that we selected. So we'll get graph only for these columns. So basically we should get age, attrition, environment satisfaction. We should get histogram and bar plot. And for education field, we should get bar plot. Let's see if we have got. So for age, attrition, and environment satisfaction, we have got histogram. For age and age, attrition, and environment satisfaction, we've got box plot. And for education field, we have got the bar plot. So everything is working fine. So we can even check with the other data frames if we want.